For almost a decade on my TV show Interview with Ed, I've been interviewing extra-dimensional beings and consciousnesses from a number of different realms. Many of my questions have been answered, but with every answer comes more questions. Join me on my ongoing quest to find out, who are we? Why are we here? And where are we going? Hi guys. First off, I want to apologize for taking such a long break. I know I haven't posted any of these podcasts in a while, and that was due to a big move I had to do over the summer and some other things, and finally getting settled down and getting caught up here. So looking forward to bringing you regular updated podcasts. And just remember, these podcasts are actually sessions from our membership portal, which has been ongoing. A few hiccups, but for the most part, even through my move, we've been doing our weekly interviews with a special guest, channelers, and the beings at the channel. And the great thing about that is that you can also tune in and ask questions yourself. So it's a great community. There's lots of offerings over there. We just finished our 17th raw file. So if you want to get your raw fix, pop on over to the membership portal and tune in there for the latest and greatest. I am happy to make these channelings public so everybody can see them and continue a regular scheduled, hopefully once a week. We'll see if I can get them out in time, but they're timeless in their information. So please enjoy as we get back into the flow here with the Interview with Ed podcast. All right. Welcome everybody. And as I said, happy Sunday. Still got a few stragglers coming in. Today, I'm super excited because we have Michaela Sheldon, who I haven't spoken to in quite some time. So I'm super excited to catch up here and just find out what's been going on. I know world events and such have been very scary, and we've been talking about this for a while. So what's new in your world? What's happening?
Oh my gosh, what isn't happening? I guess it's been a whirlwind. Lots of stuff, really just focused on the work. And I guess the last couple of years has just really helped me to zoom in and direct that focus in a more, I guess, authentic way, which took some finagling, which was a positive for me, to be honest, because world events, they really caused us to go within and pull all those spiritual beliefs to the surface and be like, okay, how am I going to adjust my life? How am I going to adjust my work? How am I going to deal with family and all this other stuff? And I think what blossomed out of it was truly better, to be honest, at least in my world. So yeah, everything's really good.
Awesome to hear. It's been a lesson for everybody, no matter where you're at in your journey, in sort of awakening. People are calling this the Great Awakening. It seems like when you thought you figured it out, you think you're in the clear. You're like, nope. It's like everything everything that's going on sort of shows you how to be a better person, a more compassionate and understanding and forgiving and not judgmental and unconditional love. Like all of that stuff is really, the universe has been teaching us, especially those who thought they already knew it all, like myself.
Right? Yeah.
We definitely don't know it all. And I'm curious because I know we did chat a little. I know we were kind of texting back and forth during the whole COVID thing and kind of like, hey, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Kind of like wink. And now, we're through, I think, the rougher times. Well, the rougher times when it comes to the pandemic, we can call it that now. That
right.
The data is overwhelming for that. Are you still in Michigan, in the Detroit area?
Yeah, I am. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So that was rough, right?
Well, to be honest, I mean, it was at times. Of course, there were pretty tough places all over the world. But here's what's funny. Well, not funny, but it was funny at the time is I had the total instinct to get the hell out of here. And I was in touch with my guides constantly, like, where do I go? Michigan is not going to be the place. Where do I go? And I said, you have to stay here. Like, this is not cool. This is not what I want to do. But they said no, and they gave me a lot of reasons for that. And at the time, it was hard to see through, right, all the stuff that was happening to this actually being a good place for the time being. And it really did turn out to be that way. Now, there's all kinds of crazy stuff, as you know, going on beneath the surface. I think here in Michigan, our governor's been a lot more focused on the surveillance piece and that kind of stuff, which has been super obvious in my area. All that stuff's going out, the cameras and the, crazy stuff. But, what the guides have been saying, well, I mean, taking it back first, a lot of my work early on, like in 2015, was focused on the split of timelines. They kept calling it the split of timelines, which I thought we were totally in. And I just thought that meant people who were spiritual and conscious and exploring, disclosure versus not. But I think it had to ground in a really physical and, tangible way. And I would have never dreamed, but as soon as it happened, I just sat back and went, oh, this is the split of timeline, Going forward, I think what's truly happening is it's all falling apart to simultaneously come back together. And I don't think it necessarily has to play out as separation or polarity or all this stuff, but the guides focus a lot on the reorganization piece. So when I was asking, where am I going? I got to get out of Michigan. They were saying you have to stay put because things are going to change so fast and so radically that to choose a location and then to put an anchor down there might not be the best thing. Stay mobile, stay excited, explore, and keep a keen eye on what's happening. And I don't think we're fully through that, to be honest.
I agree. We're definitely, I think we're just in the beginning of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
What I feel is different. So I had my news detox on the cruise. I just got back from this Hidden Secrets cruise I was speaking at, and didn't have internet for a week, which was kind of a first for me in a while. Not tuning into the news. The world didn't fall apart. I came back and everything is fine. But just now, at least in the news stuff that I follow, just a much bigger awareness around all the shenanigans, right? And what the purpose for, I follow a guy named Ed Dowd. He's a former BlackRock guy and, Wall Street guy. And he left BlackRock, I think, when he found out how dark
Corrupt.
things are doing. Yeah. Corrupt. And he's been sort of like this researcher and analyst and sort of putting numbers together in a very left brain type way to get it out to the public, but in a easy to understand and palatable way. So he just did an interview with Brian Rose on the London Reel. I don't know if you follow that. He was one of the early ones that got censored. He was right when things were going down. I think he had David Icke on, and it was like at the time the most viewed. And as crazy as David Icke is, he was right on with everything,
Oh, spot on. Yeah. 100%. Right.
And anyways, down from that, perspective is just going through all the numbers and showing what's all been happening with the agendas and how the economy and the dying of the dollar and all that was sort of happening in 2018. And he was saying based on all the research and data, it's pretty clear that COVID was an engineered event to keep the system going, to keep perpetuating, kicking the can down the road for what we're doing now, basically. And that was sort of just to get things jump-started with the totalitarian surveillance, introducing new currencies and all the stuff that's happening now. But I think they wanted to do the COVID thing to sort of get people separated and fighting and controlled chaos, right? That's distracted polarization. So that's really the only way they could introduce and sneak in these crazy policies. And for the most part, they did a good job at creating the chaos, and a lot of us bought into it and have been going back and forth and all that stuff. But it does seem now a lot of people are starting to kind of like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, things do seem quite strange. This does seem odd. Here we are 3 years later, the rushing of a vaccine without fully testing it. And that's never happened in the history like this. There's a lot of red flags went off in that sense when it came to, the safety and efficacy of particularly this vaccine. I mean, there's been funny business in the vaccine business for a long time, for many, many years, but particularly this one, it was very, very obvious in the early stages. And we were told, get your free French fries and hamburger. There was that stuff going on. But the biggest thing he said, the biggest issue we have is the forced mandates that so many people, whether they wanted to or not, had to go along with it to get the to stay at work. That was the big, crime against humanity, and we're sort of seeing the issues with that. So that part of things, again, I know we were having those conversations through text and stuff because it was a tough time, for survival for many people. How do you travel? How do you stay at work and pay your bills? And there's still, even my old industry, I'm no longer part of so much anymore, but the film industry still, for union jobs, is still requiring. I think they said they're going to lift it in May now, but still you have to show proof of vaccination before going and getting a job. And it's just like, with everything we know now, come on, guys, this is ridiculous. So navigating all that has just been quite a mess.
Yeah.
And what kind of advice were you? I know you were. I would see some of your brilliant tweets. You were really not. I think Facebook posts maybe it was more of, but whatever you were putting out, I was just like all the time either retweeting or just like, yeah, Michaela's on it. She's got the best advice for this.
Yeah. First of all, I think this is such a massive multidimensional experience that
Right.
we're having. And because we're becoming multidimensional beings, we have to use that filter in order to keep some sanity, because
Sure.
there are good things coming out of this. So resistance is forcing forward the new earth. So like even just mentioning a minute ago, Hollywood and the film industry, I have several regular clients who have been, actors, actresses who decided they would never get vaccinated, who are now coming together to form their own, agencies and create their own films, which we need, right? So we're leaving all that dark stuff behind, but we're being pushed to the brink to create the new earth in really uncomfortable ways. And so, for me, I had to draw some hard and fast lines, and I go to extremes because I feel like if I'm going to be in this work and I'm going to offer this channeled information, then I need to live it. Like I need to authentically live it, right?
Mhm.
And if we just take this one issue vaccine, we can see obviously, because you work with so many channels, and I'm sure they're all talking about DNA and genetics and genetic wars. And that's what we're reliving right now. Like in all the channeling that I've done, I personally don't believe that any pandemic was real. I think
Right.
they
Yeah.
were all orchestrated,
For going
right?
back in
In
history.
order to do all of these various things that have been happening for decades, very reptilian, right? But for me, it required really staying in my lane. And give you one of the biggest things, and I don't know how many of you on the call are familiar with me, but in addition to channeling, Ethan Fox and I, who's my partner in life, focus on an organization called Flower of Life. And one of the things that we do is a huge expo. We've had Reuben out and many others. And we decided we were going to go forward with the expo. We weren't going to
Awesome.
follow the rules and do the distancing and any of that stuff. And we worked to deal out with the hotel. And they were so hurting for money, Westin
Mhm.
Hotel,
Oh,
that they
wow.
said, we'll do it. Just keep it quiet, whatever you're going to do.
Nice.
We can't really keep that quiet because you want people to know what to expect. And I think that's another difficult aspect of this period of time is you thought you knew people and what they believed in, but you didn't really know until it all was in front of you. And so end of the day, what happened was that we got contacted by the mayor of Detroit. He
Oh,
basically
wow.
kicked us out of any single venue ever for life. What? A few days before the expo,
Oh my God.
they wanted, the deal was they were going to contact trace every one of our attendees, or they weren't going to allow us to have the expo. We just said no. And we didn't care. We paid for everyone's flight. We gave everyone their ticket money back who requested it. because that's how far and hard we were willing to stand on that line. And that's how I lived my life. So that meant, if there were practitioners I were seeing that required a mask, didn't go. I stopped going. And I know that sounds extreme. If you're like, well, just put the mask on. But I knew in my heart, and I felt deeply based on my channeling, that was not the path I wanted for myself or humanity. So what blossomed out of that, I keep using that word because I think it's totally true. Like we're planting these seeds and these wonderful things are blossoming, is a whole new life. I couldn't walk into the grocery store. I wasn't going to go through all that stupid rigmarole. So I ended up finding local farm companies that would, send produce to my door, right? I started shopping more locally. I mean, and I changed the whole way I get food into the house. And it's better for everybody, right? So,
Totally.
so I think that that's what we were being challenged to do. That's kind of the test here, is that we know what we need to do to bring the new earth into being, but it isn't an easy path for us to walk because the world is not set up that way. It's not convenient. We have to go well out of our way. So for me, I went well out of my way, and it wasn't easy, but it really was worth it in the end. So as I look at what's coming, for example, the CBDC, if I'm guessing this is
Yeah.
everyone knows. Okay.
Yeah.
I've decided long ago, I just am not going that path.
Yep.
It's going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to be very inconvenient, but I've already been setting myself up to not be in that system. And if that means it's going to be chaos for me for 4 weeks and I need to have a little backstock of food in the house because nobody's going to take my money, I'm okay with that, because
Yep.
I do not want this for humanity, and I don't want it for my kids. I don't want it for future generations, and I want to move into the new earth. So I think all along, myself included, those of us in this conversation, we were really focused more on the spiritual aspects, which is it's just so important. And that's a huge piece of my life, obviously. But we had to ground it all. We had to walk the talk, and that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, that was, likewise with me, I saw it as an opportunity to, I had purchased years prior, a sort of a pop-up greenhouse, and it was a tent thing. It was like $1,000 unit, but pretty big. And I was like, okay, here it is. I was waiting for the opportunity to be at home long enough to do this, because I knew in my gut that sort of homesteading or growing your own food was like the way to go. Like we all know, if you can do it, right? Not everybody
Right, sure.
has the means to do it, but if you could, that's going to be the best for your body, the best for the environment. So I just immediately, I was like, yep, here we go. This is an opportunity. Let's start digging a hole in the backyard and setting the foundation. And it's evolved since then. We're year 3 into this, and now I've got chickens, we got an amazing greenhouse. Version 2, I gave the tent version away to some locals who were just getting started after 2 years of doing it. And yeah, I think again, not everybody can do it, but if you can, right? For me, and that's what I've been sharing on this platform a lot, is the benefits to doing that. It's work, but you definitely get stuff that I've sort of theoretically knew about. Oh, if you grow your food and you get these health benefits and stuff, in theory, it all made sense. But when you're actually doing, you're like, oh my God, this is quite amazing. This connection to the food and the process of growing plants that you're going to eat in your salads and then have friends over. And it's nice to see their happy faces when they're eating fresh greens. And I truly do think it'll lead to this new earth idea. But again, we're not fully sustainable. We still have to go to the grocery store, and our farmers market just started to start up this week. So I'm excited to really dive in and spend the extra money to eat local and support local farmers. Again, not everybody can do that based on financial situations, based on location where you live and all that stuff, but you do as much as you can. And the benefits outweigh the inconveniences. Initially, I think when we're doing that, we're like, man, this is a lot of work. But then once you get your routine going and once you find out the benefits and actually experience them, man, oh man, it's way better. And to understand that, oh, this is how this whole new thing is going to go, with more localized food, more connection to your community and to your neighbors and these kinds of things. And that's what's kind of being birthed with all of this, totalitarianism. It's sort of forcing people to really look at the situation. I think, at least it was forcing me to look at my situation like, okay, just like what you said, I don't know if this is the earth, the world I want to continue to support. Is there an alternative? And you start looking for those alternatives, and then somehow you make it work. A big part of maybe you can share something from your perspective on this sort of conquer and divide energy. I've noticed it's even for us just trying to do this in this way, I felt this energy of people who maybe wanted to do that but couldn't, felt judged by us who were moving in that direction. Did you feel that? Have you felt that from?
Oh my God. Are you kidding? Yeah.
Yes.
My whole family.
So I'm not alone. Right.
Yeah.
No, it's not, we're not trying to, everybody can do whatever they want. It's just, these are the choices I'm doing in my life.
Right.
Because I think it's going to be better for myself and my family. No judgment, but how do you navigate that without without instigating more polarity, right?
Well, I think we have to look at what's really going on beneath the surface. And society has been set up on this foundation of fear, right? So everything that we're used to doing and how we're used to doing it is based in fear if you're willing to look. But also we have this either or mentality. So we've been living in this very linear way. I either go to Whole Foods and get all my groceries, or I'm going to starve. But what I found is having this new way of thinking, like, I can't go there anymore. What can I do? Opened up all of these options for me. So I think sometimes we don't realize how many resources and how many options we have at our fingertips on planet Earth, and how people are so resourceful and intelligent in doing incredible things. And you just look out there and you're like, oh, well, I can get this here, and I'm supporting someone who isn't a big corporation who's supporting all the stuff that I don't want to buy into, right? So I think that's very important. But, I'll be honest, at first it was really hard for me. I am the, black sheep of the family. I'm the crazy ET, chick, and, very Catholic, conventional family. They don't know what to think about me. So I was the only one who didn't go this path, who didn't get vaccinated, who's talking about these things. And at first I took it really personally because I had some really harsh words, coming my way. And I felt I have to prove to them why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. But that's kind of like trying to have a conversation with somebody who doesn't speak your language. And I think that's what we have to come to, is that literally when you're on this path and you're moving into the new earth and you're not doing the other stuff, you aren't living in the same reality. And it's really hard for people to even comprehend or understand the things that right? And I'm not, again, I'm talking about judgment, so I'm not trying to judge here. But I think we have to realize that even having those conversations is just a waste of energy. So what the guides taught me is, we have to get to the crux of intention. The reason why my family is judging me is they're in fear. They're afraid for me. They're afraid for my life. They think I'm going to get sick. They think I'm not going to be able to support myself, or all this stuff. And that kind of sets you into the compassion and the understanding and the peace of saying, well, I'm going to have to pick my battles and not really show up for everything when I know there's uncomfortable situation. And I talked about the mask thing early on, no judgment here, but it just was something that I decided I wasn't going to do. And I had families, events where it was required, and I just politely declined. And I think that's what we have to do, is we have to live our truth unapologetically, but in a state of compassion, because it's important, I believe, if you can, to leave the door open a crack, because we want everybody to have the opportunities and see all of the really cool things that we see. And, when consciousness expands, it's like opening this huge door or turning open the lens. And that's what we want for everybody. Not that they have to choose the same things that we're choosing. I had this brilliant channeling actually not too long ago from the Pleiadians. And they were talking about how in their star system, it's a multidimensional star system. So they kind of form these clusters, like some of the Pleiadians like to have a more physical existence in a more fifth dimensional way. And others have chosen a more seventh to a ninth dimensional existence. And it's very different. But they said they don't condemn or exclude anybody, from those realities. So the difference is they just accept the decisions that everyone's making. And in so doing, they are able to share information and, kind of coexist. And I think that's what we're moving towards, right? Is allowing everyone to be where they're at, but coexisting so that consciousness can continue to do its work. Because I think at the end of the day, all this stuff that's coming to the surface, that's becoming crystal clear and so transparent, we're forcing that to happen. Consciousness is allowing us to see with a very fine detail all the stuff that's been going on for decades here on planet Earth. And that's not easy to see. But
Not just decades, but maybe centuries.
yeah, forever. And it's not easy to see, but if we can just flip that switch to say, oh, it's helping us to move in the right direction or to navigate our lives to the solution, then we don't have to allow it to bring us down. And that's what I see a lot, I think, Reuben, in the spiritual community, and where a lot of that conflict and separation comes in. It's people mean well. They want to get involved in the fight because they want so desperately people to be healthy and to be happy and to live in really positive ways. But, at the end of the day, that's not really helping the situation, because by example, our lives are the contribution to humanity, that we signed up for when we decided to even come here. So living our truth is a far greater contribution than speaking it, is what usually say, even though some of us are here for that very purpose, to expose things, right? We kind of take that all on our own shoulders and our own responsibility to expose the truth and to constantly be speaking the truth. But I do think that takes energy away from our ability to create a life to the solution. And because I've left that door open a crack with my family, even at times when it wasn't easy, they've come to me and asked me questions about some of this stuff. So I know the wheels are turning. And like what you said, people are like, this isn't right. Something's not right. I was at a family gathering for Easter, and my brother-in-law came up and started talking about ESG standards. It's like, I'm really sure what that is, but something about it I don't think is right. And it's like, well, that's what it is. We started having this conversation, which never would have happened before, right? So that's why I think finding that balance of being able to keep the door open a crack, if you can, because listen, I've had clients and people throughout the last couple of years who they had to sever ties. Boundaries had to be drawn, and they were just drawn, and it was the right thing to do. It was the comfortable thing to do. And that's unfortunate. But if you can leave it open a crack, I think that's the best approach.
Totally. We got a couple of questions coming in through the chat. And then guys, go ahead and kind of planning this first hour to just sort of be with Michaela and catch up here and get all that stuff in. And then the second hour, we're going into channeling. So raise your hand if you have questions. But first of all, I guess since we're still on the topic, Shannon was asking about what is ESG? And I think we can both kind of go into that. But how quickly, it's a scam set up by lots of corporations to convince the world that global warming is a thing and carbon credits is a thing. And it was part of it's falling apart, but it was part of the global agenda to create a class system. So just like with the vaccine passes, creating a class system, just like with so the ESG is basically you have carbon credits and you have an app that shows everything that you buy, and you have to buy these products to offset the amount of carbon that you're doing. It's all bullshit. And basically Tesla, which is one of the most carbon neutral companies there isn't allowed into the club because they're not playing by the rules, where other big companies are. They're just it's a mess. It's a mess. And
Yeah, it does. So if you understand what a central bank digital currency is, it really kind of interfaces with that whole system of surveillance, where, for example, the government determines that a certain amount of meat that you buy at the grocery store is contributing too much carbon to the environment. So once you reach that limit, they're going to close your bank account or not allow you to fly on the next flight you want to take out on vacation because you've used too much carbon. And at that point, you have to buy credit. And those credits will allow you the freedom to buy more meat if you so choose, or to take that flight, right? But they'll be very expensive. And so, yeah, it's just a small part of a bigger agenda.
Yeah, and all of these things that, and I've mentioned this too before, we had the Black Lives Matter movement, the Me Too movement, the LGBT movement, the global warming movement. So all of these movements, in a sense, have been captured by specific interests who they see how people are pouring their hearts into these movements, which most, if not all, started off as a very good thing. You know, people start these movements to create difference, to better the world, right? To create more equality and justice for humanity. But these corporate interest and government interest get in there and they weasel their way, or they appoint certain people, and they then hijack the narrative to pull on the heartstrings of many good people and then push their agendas, which is more of this, again, totalitarian control mechanisms. That is, it's sad because most of it is BS. It's the Heather. We just came off this cruise with Heather Taylor, and she says the 9 truths and the 1 lie. This is more like the 9 lies and the 1 truth when it comes to these guys, but still, there is truth to what is being, some of these agendas, to what they're pushing, but much of it is being just pulling on the heartstrings of humanity. So we go all in with those agendas. The Greta Thunberg, she's definitely a nice girl who's saying nice things about the environment, but it's the way, it's this screaming at your top of the lungs to you're going to die if you don't do this. And most of it is just to manipulate humanity into the world economic. Somebody posted the world economic plans are sort of, bait and switch, that kind of stuff. And for many, it's hard to see through because so many humans, so many of us have such big hearts. The people, the majority, which is proven to me, the majority of humanity, I think their hearts are in the right place, but it's just this understanding, this discernment. And it's hard to believe that your government or people that we've known in our different government officials and companies and stuff, and to really understand what some of these true agendas are. And it's when you start to come to those conclusions, you're like, oh my God, it's almost too much. And a lot of people stick their head in the sand, or I don't want to see or hear it, because it is overwhelming. That it is a giant conspiracy, basically. When you start looking into, you're like, it's just a big conspiracy theory. But it's all sort of coming to light now. We're realizing that we've got a messed up world that we got to clean up. That's what we're doing. Like Michaela, taking a hard stance on some of these things, and many people have, thank goodness, that it then forces these agendas to rework. The people who are perpetuating a lot of these agendas are like, oh, it's not working. We're not getting the results we need. So then they try something else, and they try something else, and then the more they try, the more they disclose their true agendas, the more humanity wakes up. So it's this kind of perpetual motion of humanity disconnecting from the old ways and then finding in new ways to sort of create a more harmonious earth that isn't full of that craziness. And I do think we're moving rapidly into that world. Michelle, you have your hand up. Do you want to chime in on some of that stuff?
Yeah, but it's on a separate subject, so I can wait to let
Oh,
people.
no, I think that's fine. Yeah, go ahead with you, Michelle.
Um, Hi, Michaela, and thank you for being here. Uh, I was wondering about your homeschooling and unschooling, what work you're doing with that, like kind of where your focus is with that, and especially around the unschooling. What your kind of ideas are, how much of traditional education, like the math, science, reading is necessary, or is it totally still kind of up to parents and individuals, or is there a philosophy, I think, kind of behind what you're doing? And then other things that I could look into, like a website or something. I have two very young kids,
Yeah.
4 and 2, so they're probably not there yet, but just to
Right.
get my brain started around it.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of change within Flower of Life over the last couple of years because some of the people on the team, even the split of timelines went right through our team, unfortunately. So we did have a couple of people on board that were working with the moms, the parents to, help transition to a homeschool, unschool situation. But this is just my personal take. I really don't think it has to be any one thing because by its very nature, the education system is imploding. I mean, we see it. And I think some parents just aren't ready to bail, but I speak to them every day. Parents across the board are setting up their own systems for their kids, whether it be a complete unschooled, right, philosophy where they're just letting them do their thing. They're picking out their books. They're going on hikes and trips to visit certain museums and this and that versus, a school pod where parents are actually volunteering to teach the kids certain subjects as mentors and guides, things that they're really knowledgeable about. And I think it's just the wave of the future because unfortunately, we're seeing the amount of corruption as we just talked about in all these other areas, but especially with our kids. And I think it's so important today as parents that we are the way showers in that. Now my kids are older and out of school at this point. But there's so many resources that, Facebook groups, and definitely you can shoot me an email and I can even send you some links after the show to connect you and hook you up because I've got some people who I know who are doing really good work in that area. But my particular focus actually is not quite that. I've been working more with kids who are spiritually gifted or talk to extraterrestrials, for example, or see spirits in their home. And I help them to gain confidence. Then we define their gifts and go in all these different directions. So it's like a mentorship that I'm doing. And it's phenomenal. Oh my gosh. If there's anything that gives me hope, these kids are like amazing. Some of the kids that are coming to the planet. So yeah, I think the unschooling, homeschooling, however is best for you and however you choose to do it is just the wave of the future and a necessary step towards the new earth, personally.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm just also to add, because you asked about reading, writing, all of these things. And I think those things end up happening anyway. Like a lot of in my session work, a lot of the clients who come to me, I had this a slew, interestingly, of doctors, like medical school students coming to me in session and ready to bail because they can't do the things that they're being asked to do because they're having these profound awakenings. They're like, well, how important is it going to be for me in the future to go to college and get a degree and have this certification? The guys are like, forget about that stuff. Where you're going, nobody's going to need that because it's going to be so ground level. I don't think we're going to go through this period of time where we have these big hospital organizations, and we always have hospitals, right? But these big organizations that are running the show, it's going to be more individualized, people setting up their own practices and having their own individualized knowledge and even blending that with their spiritual gifts and abilities. So the testing and the scores and the grades and all of that stuff, I think as we move into the future is really not going to be very important.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, it definitely has a place in my heart to have a new school or a new world.
Yeah.
And yeah, just normalize these things for kids who are usually in an environment where it's not normal to see a spirit and communicate with it and verbalize those things to their family members and to their friends, and just get that spiraling so it expands further and further. Yeah, I think I think I take it upon myself as a great responsibility, kind of open up that. And it's interesting because my son is 4. He's exposed to a lot of my family members are Bible, very strict Bible, going Christians. And so he knows there, and it's very catchy terminology, like God's in heaven and all these things. And like, I hear him say that, and I don't say he's wrong at all. Of course, I, don't want him to think that, but I want like my beliefs to be in his vocabulary and normalized. And they really, like the Christians, just for an example, really do have like these catchy things. And I'm like, I want a school or an environment where kids are just like, yeah, there's extraterrestrial, and I say these things to him, and he just kind of like looks at me like, oh, that's interesting. Like it's not there yet for some kids. And I know it's in them, but it's just not like in their everyday,
Yeah. Well, we had a really cool kids event that, just because of the global situation, we haven't done for a few years, where we bring kids here to Detroit and we expose them to all of these things. And then they find like-minded friends. And a lot of them have actually stayed in touch over the years. But what's important to remember is you're his school. I mean, he chose you as a mom because you're exploring this stuff. And it isn't necessarily wrong that you have this Christian family either, because he gets to see the contrast of that. And I get this a lot too from clients. For example, women will come to me and say, wow, I'm having this huge awakening and my husband is just nowhere even close to having these conversations. And I want my kids to understand this stuff, but my husband's pulling me the other direction. And the guys will say, well, that's on purpose, because they're here to do something where they need to realize what the human condition is all about and how things are versus what is available. And I've even watched with my own kids, because I sort of had that situation. I'm not married anymore, but I had that situation. They gravitate to the spiritual and consciousness conversation, and then they'll go back and they'll come in the door and they'll say, I don't believe in that stuff anymore. And I'm like, but like, they ebb and flow through it. And I kind of think it's good for them to have the experience of both sides, because I believe that what they're here to do in the future requires that. Right. So, and we all do that, I think, in our own way. We come in and have our experience of the human condition in some area that we're meant to improve. So hopefully that was helpful.
Absolutely. Open hearts and open minds. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. There's so just, I know, before we get into channeling, we talked about, I think even in our interview back in 2015 about the split of the timelines and those types of things. Could you just give a quick explanation of what does all that mean? Is there a short version?
Yeah. So to simplify it, at every timeline that we're on, it holds an imprint. And that imprint is made up of vibration, dimension, and density. So think of every time. So let's say you work in a conventional office and you're a bookkeeper, but at the end of the day, you're going to Reuben or Night Sky event. You just shift a timeline from the office to the field that you sat on to see the ETs. That is a completely different timeline and dimension. And so we all have timelines in different dimensions right now. It's just the way of the world. Some of us are completely shifted into the 5th and others are still in the 3rd. And there's nothing wrong with the 3rd dimension. So when we have this split of timelines conversation, it's easy to judge and say, oh, those 3rd dimensional people. No, the 3rd dimension is wonderful. There's incredible opportunities there. And it doesn't mean that you're living in the 3rd dimension and you're lower vibrational. There are a lot of people living in the 5th dimension who are really miserable and lower dimensional. Right. So you can choose to suffer wherever you are. But the split of timelines is really about the earth moving into a higher dimension and higher octaves of creation. And so we can see that. We just can't. There's just some people that we can't have certain conversations with. I think even, and I've experienced it myself, even at a SETI ranch, if you guys are familiar, you could be standing next to somebody and you can see a ship in the sky and you can point it out to them and they couldn't see it to save their lives. That's because the person standing next to you is existing in a completely different timeline than the one that you're on. which is really kind of a complex concept. But where this is all going is we're all moving in the same direction. And it's not just fifth dimensional, it's multi-dimensional. Because the fifth dimension is a gateway to living in the multi-dimensional realities. And that means we have more and more options here on planet Earth, and we advance very quickly in all areas. So we get to choose. There's nothing wrong with working in a conventional office, but perhaps the way that we do it and the conversations we have there and the technologies that we use there are going to be completely different.
Yeah, brilliant. How over the time since we did the interview, wow, back in 2015, I'm like, man, it's been such a long time.
I know.
But at that time, you were the Council of Light was sort of some of the main people, but you channeled many beings. I remember Mother Mary came through, or Mary Magdalene, I'm sorry. And I've, you continue to always bring through Pleiadians in your updates with Ian. I'm always seeing the new stuff, and I'm like, oh, cool, new beings come through. Has it evolved over the years to a specific group, or is it the usual suspects? How's it?
The usual suspects, I guess, and more. I guess the one realization that I've come to is it's really just a blending of many voices into one. Even the singular guides that, name themselves like Mary Magdalene, what they've taught me is we're not just working with the consciousness of the Mary Magdalene that existed on Earth. We're tapping into the wisdom of every lifetime that she has ever led throughout the cosmos. So it's really like an Akashic kind of a pull through a consciousness that's very highly evolved and is using all of its available knowledge to support us in the here and now. So yeah, I absolutely still work with the Council of Light, the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, Isis, Mary Magdalene, whoever we need to in session, many, many, many. Yeah.
It's nice to quick announcement, guys. I looks like Interview with Ed season 1 and 2, but for season 1, we're gonna get a new release on Amazon and some other places. So just working on the formalities of that, but I'm sort of going back and just doing another QC quality control check before I do my final deliveries, and I'm just listening to Wendy Kennedy again last night, and even your interview coming up. I got to review that tonight. It seems like back then, way back in 2014, 15, everything that's been happening now, it's like it's just lined up and like, hey, get ready, here it comes. I don't think the new Earth terminology wasn't so prominent then, but definitely a big shift is happening. Get ready. You guys are going to go through, some major stuff. And it was kind of like when COVID hit, it was like, yes, here it is. Because again, like you said, we all knew things were happening, but that was like a big confirmation that, okay, these are some of these bigger shifts that everybody was talking about. But so on par. Oh my God. Like going back to 2015, even your session that you brought through is talking about splitting of timelines, reptilian agendas and different things. And it was, you hear it now and you're like, oh yeah, it's totally.
Yeah, it all makes sense, right?
Yeah.
One of the pretty cool things that happened to me in 2015 was I started downloading a book. So I channeled a book. It's called Epitime, the Anthology of Creation. Epitime is an Arcturian language. It's a word for the source of all creation. But I started editing it. So when the world went to the crapper and I was stuck in my house, I pulled this thing up and I really dove into the editing. And I was like, let's talk about everything that was happening on the planet today. So I just wanted to mention that it's free website and I have my own community there. So yeah, you can go to the community tab on my website and just search your zip code and you can join a community and it'll just open the book up for you for free. And it's a monster. But the guides really talk about it in so many different terms and really give us tips and clues as to how to maneuver through it, both energetically and physically. So,
wow,
yeah, it's amazing. But how
much
much the
I'll put
support
a
we get, and we don't even realize at the time.
right. You
Yeah.
don't know how valuable it is until it hits you.
Yeah.
Um, and so on your website, just right quick, I'll put a link down here too, and then in the replay for this. But which section in the website?
Go to the community tab and you go scroll to the bottom. You can create a login. And
Okay,
so there's groups. So this is such a hard time on planet Earth.
nice. Okay.
We're all so alone in our
Mhm.
awakening. And I think that's purposeful that we're like surrounded by people who don't get us because we're all conduits here for energy and in the big shift. And so my goal is to create community. And if you go to the community tab, you can put in your zip code and you'll find there's hundreds of groups across the globe that have been reading the book together or just meeting and hanging out in person and sharing, chatting. And there's encrypted chat actually on my website that I set up on purpose because we need it for the
Great.
community. So
Oh,
all that
great.
stuff is there, but the book comes with it for free. So you can just tap into that there.
Very cool. Well, I'll put the links here, and yeah, thanks for offering that. What an amazing offering. And yeah, I remember you were talking about a book. I don't know if the name was solidified when we did the
No, it
interview.
wasn't. No,
Yeah,
that came later. Yeah.
you were working on stuff. Um, so back to it, that's an Arcturian collective. You said that brought
No,
that through?
the name of the book, Epitaium, it's derived from an ancient Arcturian language. It means the source of all creation. So epiti is the center point of all creation, and Om, we all know, is the original sound that permeates through all things. And so they gave that to me when my editing came to a close because I was sitting back thinking, what am I going to name this? And they just dropped it right in, and it was
Okay,
perfect. So
great. What is it? Much of it's channeled, I assume.
the whole thing's channeled.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And this was a crazy period of my life, Reuben, where I was getting these downloads in the car and I would literally put my phone on microphone and just be like channeling and then get home and put it, into the laptop. And I would just get that alert where you're like, hey, you got to write. So I'd sit down and write. But to be honest with you, I'm still editing it, but it was just so appropriate for the time that I decided to put it out for free and just let
Mhm.
people read while I was editing. So it can be a very helpful transmission, I think, for what we're going through right now.
Very cool. Is that safe, channeling and driving at the same time?
Probably not.
Just kidding. But I know, I mean, it's driving. It's often said, when you're driving, that's a good time to sort of go into that altered state, or you can, when you're listening to something, you can absorb it in different ways or whatnot.
In that zone, yeah.
Well, shall we get into some channeling then? Are you ready
Sure.
to go in?
Are we just going to kind of open it up? You can ask questions or what?
Yeah. I'll ask maybe a few to open, and then yeah, absolutely. I'll sort of moderate as people raise your hands.
Okay.
I'll pop in and sort of work the interface here.
So we'll
But
just open up to the highest and best guides because what we'll do is we'll work with different guides and beings for different topics and different questions. So we'll just allow them to announce themselves as we go. All right.
okay, perfect. Thank
Okay.
you.
Hey there, if you like this broadcast and want to join us live each week, come over to the Interview with Ed membership portal. The links are down below. And you too can join in the conversation, asking the channel's questions directly and the beings at the channel. And we have a bunch of other offerings. So come on over and hang out with us. It's a great community. See you there.
I'm ready when you are.
Oh, wow. That was fast. All right. Well, first I wanted to sort of tap into a big part of this cruise I was just on was reconnecting to the energies of Atlantis and Lemuria. And it seems that those cycles are repeating themselves now more than ever, especially the destruction of Atlantis and what that civilization went through. Just wondering if the guides, whoever wants to come through, has anything to say about those two specific civilizations and how it correlates with what we're dealing with right now.
We're the Council of Light. There are so many things that we could say about these two civilizations. But before we do, want to make the point that what you're experiencing right now is a crescendo of history from not only ancient civilizations that have existed on Earth, but those that have also existed beyond the planet. Yet we know you understand that Atlantis and Lemuria, both of these civilizations were founded by intergalactic beings. And if we simply look at some of the more prominent and ascended aspects of these civilizations, you can see what's coming into being on planet Earth today. For example, in Atlantis, technology was very advanced, yet not in the way that you are experiencing it today. In fact, this is probably the furthest point from Atlantis that you are in the moment uh, than what it used to be. And we are speaking of technologies that were not harmful to either those that existed in that civilization or the environment, but were raising the vibration of the entire community such that the highest potentials could be reached and unity consciousness would flourish. And this was done by harnessing the vibration of the elements and the various natural properties of these areas. But in today's world, the technologies that have come into being are actually doing the opposite. They are lowering the potential of a higher vibration and consciousness and eroding both the elements in the physical body as well as those on Earth. So we might say you're starting from the point of the fall where these technologies were corrupted and actually bringing them back into a more restorative and we'll say harmonized manifestation of being. In addition to this, we know you understand that in both of these civilizations, genetics were revered, not in the way that you speak of them today in terms of health, for example. The genetic predisposition within any being was its most valued possession, meaning these beings understood the importance of how humans were seated in the likeness of multidimensional races throughout the cosmos and would tap into the energy and wisdom of that seeding to improve the life in their communities. But in fact, that is not happening today either. And we might say that during the fall, the technologies in Atlantis, for example, became very harmful to the genetics of those that were present at the time, perhaps even lowering the potential of access to DNA strands, which we know many of you today have now been living within the belief that there are only a certain number of DNA strands that you are able to access, and the rest have no meaning. So we know you understand you're seeing some of the parallels here, but let's go further into Lemuria, because while some of the same events and principles can be found, one of the differences is that Lemuria was built on a connection to the earth, very reverent. Not unlike ancient portals and pyramids today, where ley lines cross and energies are so high that telepathic communication can take place between a soul on Earth and the cosmos. But the entire civilization was built to harness that energy and use it in a very beneficial way, whether it was in space or in homes or in gathering places to meditate. And much of this was eroded as well. Architecturally speaking, we see so much of that erosion having come into the timeline that you are on. You are not living in ways in harmony with the energy of Earth, nor have a great respect for that energy either. And certainly we could go into a lot of detail about malevolent beings and focus as to why these civilizations became what they did. But you understand that that malevolence and those beings and that focus, it still goes on. So it is no different, perhaps, what you're facing here than what they faced in those timelines. You are just different souls with different agendas and a different form of consciousness here to ensure that you move through this period to a sense of enlightenment. And when you do, it is not guaranteed that this history will not repeat, because you can change the reality in physical, you can change it energetically, but in a moment's notice, you can negate and doubt that change. So perhaps what we're saying here is that the more you look at the chaos and the trauma of periods of the past, you're inviting that into the potential of your future. And it's not to say that you shouldn't discuss these periods. We think that the history is so important. It's so rich with vital information for you to use today. But to see yourselves as ambassadors of a new future, bringing elements of these various civilizations together in a way more appropriate to the beings that you are becoming.
Nice. So in a sense, are we, this collective now, are we integrating those two energies and sort of finding the sweet spot? So
Some of you are, and not all of you, and that's okay, because we really want to drive home the point of the multi-galactic DNA. Some of you are so tuned in to your Atlantean and Lemurian past that it runs through your veins no greater than blood. There's a vibration that is there that reminds you of these periods of time and things that you did that are important prophecies you are here to bring back and leave behind again. But there are others with a similar predisposition to Lyra, for example, or to Sirius. And they're activating that genetic potential now. And they're remembering that things happened there very similar to what you speak of in these other locations. And they're bringing in the same energy and wisdom and advanced potential in their own area.
I see. So we're not necessarily limited to Lemurian Atlantis. We have access to these other timelines, other civilizations that have also learned and overcome the limitations from their versions of Atlantis and Lemuria, I should say, and we can pull that in. So we've got a lot to work from. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what we're saying is it's far more expansive than just these two areas of focus. But
Gotcha.
we think the excitement and the interest in these two civilizations is evidence that so many of you were there and experienced those things. And of course, that would be no mistake to come back in the here and now and to be tapping into that history is extremely important in where you are going.
I see. Is there anything specific from, say, the Atlantean? I know I've heard stories that both civilizations used crystalline power and had different types of energy sources. Are we, and perhaps the crystals was the reason for the demise of the Atlantean civilization. Is this something that we can take note of to be careful of or embrace, or in the sense of technologies?
So we want to answer your question, but we want to start with the analogy of AI, because there is a huge focus right now on planet Earth to interface humans with technology. And it's a malevolent focus. It is not in your best interest. So if we look at the way technology worked in Atlantis, for example, working with crystalline energy, the beings there were literally interfacing with that crystalline technology because the elements within them were no different. So you are elemental beings, you are crystalline beings. And the knowledge that existed in those times was helpful in ensuring the benevolence of technologies that would hold bodies and minds and spirits to a higher standard, to a higher vibration, even a more unified and coherent environment. But this is also a very risky model, because if free energy is used, it is also easily accessed. And this is why intention was so important. Councils, for example, in Atlantis, the ancients called themselves the Nakal, they were very focused on the interface of those technologies by anyone in the civilization. There were scanning devices, for lack of a better term, that were ensuring intentions were positive and matching of those who were privy to the inner workings of those technologies. And this is a part of the demise, was that the intention became corrupted. And there were beings that came in who were not in the highest and best interest and wanted to lower the frequency of those there in order to facilitate their own agendas. And so you can see the parallels here. Very similar in Atlantis, or in Lemuria to Atlantis. However, what we might say is the Atlantean technologies were very based in natural elements, especially water. Water was the primary modality and connection of these technologies, and they would interface with the crystalline waterways of the physical bodies of those in the civilization. In Lemuria, there was more of an expansive draw from within the inner earth, capitalizing on multiple different resources and even going deep into the crystalline core. Much of this was sonic or electromagnetic in its wave, but not like the electromagnetics you receive today, a far more harmonious and beneficial wave that was being projected from the inner earth to the surface. So actually what you're seeing today is a complete reversal of these things. And we don't fear the potential of what's impending in these areas. And this is why. The premise that much of your technology has been built on, even while it is so destructive to the human body and to nature, is very easily shifted. Those who have ancient knowledge, we believe, are coming to the planet in mass and will have the ability to transform these technologies into something far more beneficial for human in the future.
Right. So it's like a slight frequency shift, or instead of using the 5G spectrum of things, then maybe just we'll name it, for example, 6G or 7G or something like that, but it'll be a more harmonious frequency that humans can interact with, as opposed to the negative spectrum.
Yes. Well, imagine this. You are all communication antennas. Within you, you have the power to teleconnect to anything that you desire. But the only reason you can't in this reality is that you have been suppressed by a very dense and heavy and unnatural energy. It sort of scrambles the signal, in other words, and requires you to go outside using a very inorganic source. And you're moving into a reality where using your own technology to connect to someone on the other side of the planet is truly possible. But it requires that the technologies that you have today become harmonizers of your environment, not complicating it in the way that they are.
Any suggestions on what we could do now to sort of help harmonize things in a more coherent way?
Well, many of you are already doing that. And we see this within your inner technology, and this is where it starts. And we can take this conversation in many directions, but we know you understand that anything that's reflected in the inner world becomes a reality in the outer world. So if we do not believe that we have the ability to connect and communicate with something beyond ourselves in the universe, then we're going to have a suppressive energy beyond ourselves that is a matching vibration of that. So ultimately, what you're going for is to work on your inner connection, whether they be with guides, beings, teachers, masters, collectives like ourselves, or with each other, because that is ultimately going to build a frequency field. Much of what the technology in these civilizations, or the technologies, we should say, in these civilizations relied on was heart coherence. Because heart coherence was a measurable frequency that could be raised and adjusted by these technologies in the most beneficial way. But heart coherence here on planet Earth is something that has become broken and not as strong as it used to be, So if you're working on your own coherence, focused on your own heart, for example, whether that comes about using a specific meditative process of breath or some type of activation, or even choosing to merge yourself with the most pure and organic forms of nature, you are going to be a contributing factor to the future reality that you desire.
Gotcha. So there's fears of AI taking over and this kind of thing. As long as we do the inner work and stay in our own field, then the versions of the AI that we're going to interact with is going to be of a more harmonized, better version, more coherent version.
This is the Pleiadians. And this is a complicated question for us to answer, because what we want you to imagine is that there are millions of potentials, and there certainly are. And we can look at those potentials in each moment and measure their vibration and say, these are the ones that are more apt to ground based on where human consciousness currently measures. But remember, there's a split of timeline going on today. And some of you are exploring alternate technologies that others have never even imagined exist. And we think that's going to be the first phase of ushering in some of these more beneficial technologies, meaning they will not immediately manifest or become so widespread on the planet that they take over everything else. But you'll begin to see communities evolving, for example, where these old ways of working with energy and AI, for example, are no longer accepted nor utilized. And these will become more, we'll say, clear and free zones of electromagnetic fields that are harmful to humans. In fact, there may even be advanced technology that clear those areas. And you may wonder, well, how will we connect with those who are not coming to our realization? We think it's inevitable, because the fifth dimension, it vibrates in such a high speed that the more humans focus in those areas, the more draw it will have on the entire collective. So moving an entire race together at one is not an easy task, especially on a material planet.
Mhm.
But what you're saying is true. We believe it's possible that there will be a shift in technology, but we're going out a few years, quite a number of years. But in the interim, what you'll see are pockets of consciousness that are operating in more advanced technologies. And these are going to become, we'll say, guideposts for the whole of humanity, because inevitably these old technologies will fail. We see so much of that happening already. For example, you've been talking a great deal today in your conversations about medicines. And we see a great awakening and realization going on within the whole of humanity, that there is a deep failure taking place there. But many have not yet discovered alternatives to that. So they are still cycling in the failure. But when the alternatives begin to show up and are crystal clear options, we think many others will seek them out.
Fascinating. Yeah, it seems almost because of the centralized control of our military industrial complex and these kinds of things, as that falls apart, then it sort of is a permission slip for inventors now to who have had these ideas for years, but are now able to bring them out in a more safe way and not get whack-a-mole down like in the old days.
Well, we don't even worry so much about the military industrial complex, for example, because we already see the potential and the possibility across the board of those creating very advanced technologies despite anything else that's happening. And we know that it seems illogical right now, because there's so much surveillance and resistance from those who do not want to see humanity rise. But remember, this is not just a material reality that you're existing within, is also a vibrational and energetic one. So if you truly believe that you're here to create something and that is going to serve humanity, what begins to happen is magical, because you've already come with the resources to put it into place. So imagine all of these people throughout the globe, very much focused on these advanced techniques and offerings to humanity rising at the same time. It will be like a draw of energy towards the fifth dimension. It has to be. So regardless of what's still happening in the, we'll coin it the old Earth, the new Earth is going to take shape and precedent. And the question remains, will humans believe in the possibility of those things? That's the most critical consideration, because these things exist today. But the reason that they don't hold and become more known is that even those who create them still have some doubt that they can do the miraculous things that they realize internally are possible.
Sure.
Belief is a very strong component of ushering all of these new material manifestations into being, but also allowing them to truly hold and become replacements for the things that have been here for a very long time.
I see. We have a question in the chat from Alana. She's wondering, there's a lot of buzz around light language and how it comes in different forms. Is there a such thing as dark language? The odd question.
Yes. So we have the Arcturians here. And we don't like to call it dark language because it isn't exclusively dark. And there are various spectrums and ranges of sound and tonality that are affecting humans vibrationally in good and bad ways. So let's take light language first. Those who are speaking light language are bringing in a very massive amount of energy and information from the cosmos in a very compact offering that is integrated in a unique way. But here on planet Earth, unfortunately, what we've seen is the original tones and sounds of human language have been so stripped of their richness and their length, and perhaps their reverberation within the self, that many of the light languages that are spoken today aren't nearly as potent as they could be. And this is not a criticism. So if you look back at ancient times, the reason for the chants and the tones and the Sanskrit language was to keep the internal resonance at such a threshold that a huge amount of energy could come through an individual as a conduit and be shared. So practicing that resonance and expanding that bandwidth through elongated tones and sounds and breath is very important. But certainly there are some who are receiving languages from beings with malevolent focus, unfortunately. And the way to always distinguish the difference is to go straight within your body and to truly step into the extrasensory suite of tools that you have available. Because regardless of who this person is and what they explain they are sharing, you are an individual. And there are certain light languages that you are going to need and others that are not for you. So right away on the very first tone, the very first note, if you are centered, you will distinguish the difference between something that's either malevolent or benevolent, or something that is needed within your system or perhaps not. And we think that that discernment is so important and should follow you through life.
Awesome. Thank you. Catherine, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for everything. Kind of a personal question of an experience that we've really opened up and, are looking in the skies so much, always, because we've seen some really spectacular things. And on March 17th, that's St. Patrick's Day, yes. So I was in bed at like 9:30 at night in Northern California, and these red lights with long, sharp tails. And I mean, they were like flaming red, it was like a fleet of light, flew across the sky. And I'm like screaming for my husband to come and see them as well. And he did. And what was more exciting was also realizing that many, many other people had seen them too. And I finally found some tiny little news outlet that had said a story about it. and they get some astrophysicist on there. Oh, space junk, and it's so disheartening because I really just don't believe that. But I wasn't sure if you were able to tap into like what that was on St. Patrick's Day in Northern California, flying over, who that was, what that was, if there was any way to speak into that.
So we have a council from Lyra stepping in and welcome them. There are many council throughout the galactic universe, ambassadors from various star systems who are here not to change the Earth's experience or human reality, but to observe not only the various frequency fields that exist on planet Earth, but to measure them so that we have a better idea as to how to work with conduits like yourself and others to raise consciousness, to support not only the evolution of the human spirit, but especially the physical body, because we are noticing right now a great deal of interference that is taking place in certain areas. And the area that you are speaking of is one of great note. And we come in not to clear necessarily or to rid these areas of what is going wrong, but to understand how to counteract it through the physical body and through the connection of spirit. So we're working with, perhaps we could say, oracles and healers on planet Earth, and we're sharing with them specific insights, whether it be for a technology, for example, as you've just been speaking about, or whether it be a transmission of sorts. And the appearance of the ship is always going to change. So we really want to explain here exactly what you're seeing. We use plasma ships, and these plasma ships, they aren't exactly physical. They run on light and energy. And when they are sensing a certain frequency in the environment that they are measuring, there will be a change in the dynamic of the ship itself. So whether you see a certain color like red, for example, or a certain shape, often that is a literal change that's going on within us and within the ship itself, because we are morphing and alchemizing to your Earth atmosphere. And so many would like to categorize specific ships and their colors and their shapes to specific beings and locations. And we're just sharing this information to always keep in mind that many of these advanced plasma ships are going to change based on the atmosphere and the energies that they intersect with.
No, thank you so much for, just, I mean, it's so hard when you're hearing on these news, they're so quick to find one random expert to completely just label it as some freaking weather balloon or space junk, and some random picture of a satellite. Oh, this Japanese satellite from 3 years ago. And they're so quick to throw together some hodgepodge of a story,
Well, what we want you to keep in mind always is that disclosure, it is starting within every single human being. So regardless of what's being shown in the collective, we're seeing a great many people questioning these things similar to you. The only difference between you and them is your readiness to actually believe in what you see. And that, we think, is coming. And when that threshold is passed, you won't see as much of the resistance, we believe, in the outer world, because that disclosure, it's a natural part of who you're becoming. It isn't necessarily to prove that anything exists beyond yourselves. You are a part of all of the things that you experience. So to have this interface with a fleet of Lyran ships is to know that your own Lyran history is being triggered. And that's quite a phenomenal statement to make. You are forever changed by that interaction. And there are some on planet Earth who do not want to know. Because if it were known, humans would be seeking out these experiences en masse and changing in such a positive direction in terms of consciousness that it would be very hard for them to control the math.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks, guys. I just posted on Twitter. There was a spiral above Alaska, I guess yesterday, or what day is it today? Yes, yesterday. So lots of these types of strange phenomena, and I think they were trying to say it was a SpaceX thing. And it's like everything's SpaceX now, even though I don't think in Alaska they actually have a SpaceX. I don't know. There's a lot of strangeness going on. It's fun to see it all
Well, we
unfold.
can comment. We can comment on Alaska. This is actually the Council of Light. What you must realize about that region is it's extremely ancient and potent in its under earth frequencies. And this is why there are many underground, we'll say, not only portals, but areas of study that go back a great deal of time. And it's not unusual for us to see this swirling energy above that region. It is just that you haven't been able to see it as human beings as readily as you are now, because you're becoming more available to energies that exist in higher dimensions. So imagine that there's a portal beneath the earth. That portal is going to show some type of energetic spiral or movement above the earth. But there are many who would never notice that a portal existed there at all. But you're coming into a period of time where you're so sensitive and so tuned into energy and available to things that exist beyond the veil, in other words, that seeing these phenomenon are going to become far more commonplace.
Yep, I'm already experiencing that. It's awesome. Rosemary has a question in the chat about are the Pleiadians connected to, or what is their connection to? I may not be saying this, but Aziz, as the Z's beings. I don't know if you're familiar or know what that name is. Just wondering if you might have any information on that.
So as the Pleiadians, we are ambassadors of connection with every other race and every other planet and star system throughout the galaxy. In fact, we've opened up our star system to invite others in because we understand the value of the melting pot of genetics. It was not an easy transition for us long ago, but now we embrace it. When you refer to these beings, there are so many that come to mind that we don't necessarily believe need to be named, but hold very similar characteristics to humans. In other words, they're somewhat humanoid and more futuristic in their presentation. And we have had conversations with them. And in fact, we are inviting many of those from a more future human reality to communicate with us about how to bring these futuristic timeline experiences into the now. And we are sharing teachings on this as well. So there aren't many races of beings that we haven't had some positive relationship with, especially in recent times, because that's our goal. We see ourselves somewhat as connectors of the universe, and we cherish those connections.
Awesome. Tony, go ahead. You have a question.
Yes, hi, Council Advisor. It's an absolute pleasure to be in your presence. We talked earlier, like about food and like whether or not you had resources to grow your own food, so it's clean and all these things. But like through our belief systems, and I guess that also ties into medicine. Like through our belief systems, aren't we able, if like for example, we don't have a resource to grow our own food, then we have to buy it from a place that isn't, I guess, too aligned. Like, don't we have our own internal power to restructure the food that we're eating and like in a way kind of like speak to it to only take in the nutrients that our body needs that is aligned, and also like tell it to just expel the ones that aren't?
This is the Pleiadians. We love this question because it is leaning into the power and the possibility of what every human possesses. At the same time, however, what you have to keep in mind is you're not only an individual, you are part of a collective. And that must be factored in, because here on planet Earth today, while there are so many who are studying these spiritual philosophies and using various affirmations and beliefs to change physical material, the body that you exist within is always going to have some connection to the predisposition of other bodies, meaning even if you are eating 100% pure and clean, there's a genetic tie to the human condition and diseases and things that humans came to experience. So we might say that some of your soul's plan, or what you've put into motion before coming, is going to override your desire to spiritually change it. And this is why you've chosen to be here as physical beings. So you didn't want to get too far out of reach of what the physical material experience had to offer. So we look at this process as more of an individualized potential. Many of you have been practicing this for a long time. You've been infusing your food with love and with prayer, and that vibration is in the material. So it has to have an effect both on the material and on the body that ingests it. But if the body itself already has ingested things long ago that contain chemicals and metals and things like this, you are in a very turbulent environment where the parts of the whole all have to be considered. So we're not trying to diminish what you're saying, but perhaps suggest that in this period of time on planet Earth, it's difficult for everyone to achieve that. And we want to go back to the statement that was made about belief, and especially with advancements in technologies, beliefs are multidimensional. And so we want to give you an example of this. We may say, we believe that we have cleansed the food, but deep beneath in the subconscious mind, there are many other beliefs that are contributing to what we have just stated. We might also believe that the food on planet Earth is so contaminated that it could never be cleansed or purified. We may also believe that in the future, we are going to have to deal with this problem for many, many years. And so we have to sort out through consciousness these various beliefs and question them. And our advice is this: becoming more neutral is a far better solution, which we know somewhat contradicts what you're saying. You want to affirm that something is pure and clear. And we say, be neutral about its current state, regardless of what it is, because that neutrality will fare far better in the interim than actually trying to change its constitution. So not to take away your need or desire to prey upon food and to change it, do that by all means, but also do not put conditions, so many conditions in the way of having to change the current reality. Simply strive for doing your best in the material world that you possibly can, and affirm that you are doing that, because remember, that does more in the collective, and that's ultimately what you want. Because your reality can reach the pinnacle of any vibration and dimension you choose, but it's always going to be slightly hampered by the Earth experience and the human collective that you exist as a part of. And we don't want to inject any lack of faith into the conversation. We actually think that you chose humanity for the wild ride and experience that you're having. So all of the various components are there, even if there are things that you don't like, to move you all into a higher dimension. So we hope that was helpful in terms of what you are asking.
Yes, that was. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tony. Wade, good to see you. It's been not too long. Go ahead.
So this plasma ship soon.
Yes.
I have a question back on free energy. I'm curious, can we expect to obtain free energy based on a single principle that is applied that meets different applications? Will there be free energy using different basic principles for different applications, such as transportation or home use or small appliances, or how could we expect that to work in?
So we're the Arcturian Collective, and we think it is going to be necessary for different forms of free energy to come into being for different applications. And it has less to do with how you're using it, and in our minds, more to do with the geographic region that you live in. And this is why, if we take you back to some of the original conversations about our Atlantis, for example, and even going back to our star system and some of the things that we've done in Arcturus, we're pulling and drawing from the natural resources and the energy of Earth. And that energy may change or become more potent at times and become less potent at times. And that's okay, because free energy always exists and we're able to tap into it. But there are going to be certain geographic regions that will say become the model for using free energy. And where it begins is a variety of different options and available techniques. It may move into a more common fashion as you move down this path, but we don't think it has to. And here's why. You're moving into a multidimensional reality, and that means more options. More options to tap into energy from different sources, whether it be free energy, whether it be elemental energy, whether it be working with water, whether it be working within your own energy fields. All of these things are going to be applicable and needed, because keep in mind that even material itself is going to upgrade dramatically as you move through these periods. And we want to explain this for a moment. Everything that you possess today, whether it is your home or your automobile, they were manifested into being and are connected to your energy field. They are upheld by your belief system. They are upheld by your expectations of them. And those things are changing so much. One of the greater concerns, we should say, we have is that there's been so much influence about these things in a negative direction. We don't think that it's important to change the material world in order to conserve energy, because energy abounds. You have no lack of energy to tap into on planet Earth. So imagine the possibilities. And that's what you'll see. You'll see material energy morph into so many incredible, amazing, and different things that it may require different energy sources to utilize them.
So that sounds to me that in the future, certain technologies or capabilities might be located based on the energy available to the Earth. So there'd be different capabilities in different locations of the Earth.
Absolutely. And we want to even add to that further to remind you that we're seeing a very huge restructuring going on the planet today. In fact, we think over the next several years, what you're going to notice is humans are going to be gravitating to each other. We might even call these cosmic families or cosmic communities that are coming together. And they may have very similar histories, as we've spoken to earlier. For example, having worked together in Atlantis and using some of those principles within their own communities. And that's why at first you may see different manifestations of what you call free energy and different devices, because they will be coming in from so many different cosmic locations. But they will be shared, and we think they will change and morph and blend. And eventually you may see some commonality between these various applications.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wade. Michelle, we got a question.
Hello. So good to have you here. Thank you so much. An honor. And I had kind of a big picture question. I was wondering if the way of the light and the way of the dark are both trying to get back to oneness or back to source, and the way of the light being unity and equality, and the way of the dark being single source of power, the most powerful in a singular way. one power source. And then kind of a follow-up, if the way of the dark is being guided as the same way that the way of the light is being guided by source, equally loved by source and both ways guided by source.
We are the Pleiadians, and we want to explain our experience of light and dark, and then we will answer your question. We have experienced light and dark simply as contrast, and we don't believe that there should ever be a common point of merging of the two other than the highest potential of a soul reintegration, which is with God. But even at that point, there is some individuality and contrast, which we know is hard to understand because we think in a merged state, we would all be acting as one. But for that merged state to expand, there must be some separation of consciousness in order to have an experience of self. God itself, creator, prime creator, universe, if this is what you prefer to call it, began creating because it realized there was something beyond itself and began to influence that thing and realized it was influencing it back. And that was the beginning of creation. So if there must be something beyond the self for us to distinguish, it means that contrast is necessary for us to create. The problem that we see on planet Earth, and we think you've put it beautifully, is that the darkness has been hijacked and become very dense and malevolent as opposed to simply contrast. So what you could be dealing with on planet Earth, as opposed to this polarity of light and dark, is an experience of multiple contrasting experiences where you're simply preferring what you desire and creating your experience to that desire. But the darkness has become a very suppressive and malevolent force, even hierarchical. So we think where you're going is not necessarily having to rid the darkness completely from the earth, but to realizing the amount of light that you're working with that influences that darkness. And that's ultimately the point in experience that you are all in. The entire timeline that has unfolded over the last several years, we could say has been geared towards finding your true power or your true sovereignty, which you might call the light of consciousness or the ability to create, which has never been hampered by anything. But the darkness has become so prevalent and so prominent because there is a belief that it is holding you back. So if it is simply seen as something you can influence, it may begin to influence you back in a positive way, meaning it's guiding your creation into a greater place of power and perhaps unification and support. Because unity consciousness on a physical planet, it operates quite differently than perhaps in heaven. There are collectives, for example, such as ourselves. Right now, we're operating through this channel in a merged state, and we are speaking through a one voice. And that is only because we're drawing upon the wisdom of every part of the whole and merging it to the highest and most beneficial degree. So imagine living on a physical planet, having a separate body, a separate mind, a separate consciousness, but sharing the best of yourself with everything that you meet and receiving that in return. That's what we see unity consciousness to be. So it doesn't necessarily negate the darkness or the contrast, but the contrast up-levels the light. And that is how we think the earth will continue to expand into higher and higher dimensions and octaves of vibration, whatever you'd like to call it. We just simply see it a little bit differently than what you're stating.
Thank you. That was very interesting. I've never heard that consciousness felt like there was something outside of itself. That's something for me to ponder over as well.
So if we go back to ancient civilizations, for example, the most prominent passage is know thyself. For God to become conscious or prime creator to have a consciousness, it has to know of itself. But how does it know of itself that there is nothing to experience beyond itself? So there is no reflective mirror. There's no experience to have of the self. There is nothing to know. So even in the highest and most merged state, where beings become one, there is still somewhat of a conscious and separate identity or thought stream that is happening. But it's in such alignment and acceptance and non-resistance of everything around it, that everything around it becomes improved. So that's ultimately what you're going for on planet Earth, is this sense of improvement within all things, which is the ultimate unification.
Thanks, Michelle. Kim has a question in the chat asking, as we see a shift in our money, how can we move through these upcoming times, and what might we expect in the time of transition to a higher consciousness experience with currency?
So this is the Pleiadians. It's truly hard for us to anticipate how quickly or slowly this will go, because you are determining it on a day-to-day basis. But we do want you to remember that the entire concept or construct of physical and monetary currency is a relationship to your sovereignty and worth. So that is the origins of how everything is manifesting beyond you. If there is control of the currency, or you are giving up your power around money, it has to do more with a potential to see the self as worthy of self-generating that energy, because you all truly come with an inheritance. The exact amount of money that you will need to do the things that you are meant to do, it is just often you are stepping outside of that inheritance and trying to physically generate what you need. But the change in currency is inevitable. And here's why. Consciousness has lifted to such a degree that the imprint of money, which is very dense and steeped in hierarchy, has to alchemize. So when you're anticipating a bank failure, for example, or a failure of the markets, what we're seeing is an opportunity for rebirth. And you only must look a short distance in order to see what's already birthing from that, which is a more sovereign currency. So if you're going for sovereignty within, you're attempting to find that sovereignty as a vibrational match beyond you. And our advice is to always take the path of least resistance. Wherever there is resistance around anything, whether it be the monetary system or the health system or education, you are looking to break free of that and open up a new avenue or a path. And we see so many of these advanced currencies becoming something new in the next several years. There are so many of them today because they haven't truly come into their final stage of being, even though we see many of them as already beneficial to the change that you're going through. So our advice is balance. You're always attempting to have balance. It's hard to jump from one timeline to another instantaneously. There are parts of your life that are still going to require you to interface with the old system for a while. As long as you can do that in neutrality, but also have a hand in the new system, you will fare very well. Because we're not attempting to take risks beyond our comfort zone. What we're attempting to do is use our intuition in each moment to choose the things that might seem risky, but we know are leading us into a new reality, while still managing the responsibilities that we have in the interim. So those of you who are still very ingrained, let's say, in the third dimensional monetary system, may need to loosely let go and break ties and still be there for a while, managing to the best of your ability while you begin investing in things that are better suited to your freedom and sovereignty in the future.
Awesome.
You're asking us, we believe, for an extension of time as to how this is going to take place. And we do want to mention that the next 5 years, we believe, will be heavily focused in economics and the financial system. It has to be. It won't be the only area of focus, but we believe the next 5 years will be very telling. And by the time you reach the end of that 5 years, we'll look back and see a great deal of change.
Awesome. Thank you. Rosemary had her hand up. Did you still have a question, Rosemary? She there? Maybe we lost her.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. So yeah, I wanted to go back to, I think it was Michelle's question just really quickly, about the light and the dark and the duality. And so if we're expanding and the light is expanding and we're evolving, is that also happening with well, you mentioned the conflict. And so if we're going in this direction of human expansion and evolving as far as we possibly can, is that also happening on the conflicting side? And so then what's the resolution to that? What does it all come back to? The confliction turns into light? Or I was just kind of wondering about that.
Well, this is a council of light. Let's put it this way. When you're dealing with darkness and you're asking us about darkness, what we see is history. So if we look at the great spiral of time and the Akashic records, everything that has ever happened before is going to come around again at some point. That is law, because you are meant to experience it through a new consciousness and create it into something else, because we do not create from nothingness. So the darkness that exists in this timeline, we might say, is history that was never met with a higher consciousness and has continued to evolve to become darker and darker and darker. So what you're attempting to do in this experience is to change that history through your personal life, not only how you see it, but how you use it as the guiding force to create something new. We see so many on planet Earth today addressing these experiences in the same way they did before, just simply using new terminology. And it's all about vibration. Let's give you an example. If a war has happened anywhere in the universe, that war is apt to come back again somewhere else, because everything that has ever been created never dies. But when that war happens, those on planet Earth, if that is where it takes place, can go to war, and there can be fighting and killing, and there can be a great divide in the collective. And that vibration, being the same as the origins of war, is going to perpetuate it throughout history. But we know there are wars going on right now. And the difference that we see is how you're perceiving the war. There's been so much awakening that has taken place that the war that seems such a physical reality and something that's going on the physical plane is being understood as influence and created by those with a certain agenda. And that's a brand new way of seeing war. It doesn't make the war any less real, but the consciousness within the humans experiencing it is changing it nonetheless. So how you make the darkness light is through the consciousness that you apply to it, and then the physical action steps you take that match that consciousness. And so we might say that this is a timeline collision of a massive scale, and it was always meant to be this way. Right now, the history of so many different civilizations and star systems and earthly timelines are all coming together at the same point. And that's because you've become the people that could handle that amount of energy and information, even though we know it doesn't seem that way at times. And we don't negate the amount of stress and worry that you feel. Consciousness has the ability to actually expose many things at once that need to be alchemized into something new. So on the physical plane, that's exactly what you are doing. And we know that many of you have considered the idea of justice. Those who are creating the darkness should be held to punishment or to justice. And while we understand how you feel that way, and it certainly is important to address emotions, justice alone would not serve the energy. So in a physical plane, we need to address both the physical and the vibrational. And would justice or punishment be the same vibration as the very acts themselves? So these are all the things that we have pondered in our star system for a great many years and have come to address differently than what you do on planet Earth.
Awesome. Rosemary, was that anything else to add to that?
No, that was interesting. So essentially, by our frequencies and vibrations, we're not clearing it, but changing it, that darkness.
It takes both the physical and the vibrational contribution in order to change it. And that is the most important statement that we can make. The amount of light that you hold is actually equal to the amount of energy and physical capacity you have to do the same in physical. So we know light seems this mystical and sometimes abstract concept to deal with. We actually see light as your predisposition. You are light in motion. And everything you experience is light in motion to some spectrum or degree. It's just that perhaps the darkness has been slowed in its vibration so much that it's pulling you backwards in time and causing you to experience all of these distortions. Time doesn't truly exist. We know you understand this. So the more you ascend, the more you are working with a higher consciousness, the more you are apt to not have to worry about how dark the dark gets, because it will dissolve itself. In other words, nothing is sustainable forever. And there are cycles of time that you will go through where the darkness is meant to be prominent, because it is the only agent of change that a certain race throughout the universe is able to accept in order to move to the next level of consciousness, or use as the tool to move to the next level of consciousness. We're not saying you have to suffer in order to ascend. We're saying that you're meant to see things very clearly that had existed for a long time that have been holding you back. And you're doing that now. So we congratulate you on that, because that is a tremendous step forward from where many of these timelines are experiencing that have repeated throughout history originated.
All right. Rosemary, I think yeah, there you go.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. We're right at the 2-hour mark. Wade has his hand up. Can we squeeze in one more question?
Yes, sure,
Okay, go ahead, Wade.
Well, it's more esoteric, going back, we're talking about the source wanted to know itself and to send out fractals of souls to be able to look back and see itself. And it seems to me if our source was able to come into being and do that, there's nothing to conclude that there's another source somewhere that was able to do that. Whether maybe our source is a fractal of an even larger source and it just keeps going back infinitely. Can you comment on that?
Well, we think you hit the hammer, the nail on the head, in other words, because ultimately God, source, prime creator, whatever you want to call it, exists within you. And you are sending fractals of yourself out in every moment and responding to those. The idea of a mirror reflection comes into this conversation, which we know is a spiritual tool. Ultimately, you are seeing a mirror reflection and manifestation of yourself, regardless of whether you like it or not. And that's the origins of everything in the universe. It's to play and to become curious and to study and to understand yourself through many different aspects of that self. Source energy we see as perhaps a field created by God. In other words, everything that God has created has manifested in a field. And that field, a part of it comes with you to planet Earth when you incarnate. So you are existing within your own mini source field, and you are orchestrating manifestations through that field in every second, in every moment. But there are parts of you that exist beyond this timeline, throughout the cosmos and in different lifetimes on Earth at this very moment. So it's truly no different in the physical body you stand in today, although you're meant to be focused in the here and now, and it is why you are. We know that you're playing with these concepts in a spiritual sense, and we think that's very important and a part of your evolutionary process. But at the same time, to have come here with this very unique ability to be embodied in form and to have a material existence is truly what you wanted.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wade. And thank you. Wow. And she's back just like that. Amazing. It used to take you a little bit longer to get into the
Oh,
channel.
yeah, no, not anymore.
Wow. Awesome. What a pleasure and an honor. And we waited way too long to make this happen, but
Yeah,
I'm so glad
so fun.
you came in and were able to share. So we got a little bit of your community, which I was kind of checking out a little bit. That's super awesome that you offer that. And
Take advantage if you can. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I've already signed up. I'm in. That's super cool that you created such a platform. So looks like there's people all over the country and maybe the world that are joining in there.
I know. It's so cool. It blows my mind every time I open up and look at it. I mean, there's groups all over the planet. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're doing, but I just love that they're getting together. So I'm happy about it.
What
You
an
know?
amazing resource. And you're still working at Flower of Life with Ethan, and you guys are doing amazing things.
I am. Yeah. Like the Flower of Life stuff still goes on in the background, but we've just had a shift in the last couple of years and we've gone back to the basics. We're really focused on our own work right now. But yeah, still working with the kids and all that good stuff. We just put out some new shows on the Awaken Empowered Expo YouTube channel, and we're on Spotify and all of that. We're doing a podcast, but what some of you might like is we just did a new show. There's 3 episodes out. It's called Channeled Revelations. And Ethan's asking the questions of the guides, and he always asks the best questions. So there's some really good 2-hour channeled episodes that are free out there that are brand new that you can check out. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for continuing to do this work. It's
Thank
again,
you.
it's an honor. I can't believe we've been doing this for me, coming up on 10-year mark, for you even longer. And the information just remains relevant and more relevant now than ever. And so it's so cool to see the word's getting out. People are checking in, and we're changing the world one by one within our own selves, right? We're changing our own world, which is reflecting and creating the world, the changes there. So thank you so much again, Michaela, and don't be a stranger.
Yeah. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you like this interview. We actually do this every week on my membership portal page. You can access it through interviewwithed.org or click on the link somewhere in here. I'll put a link, and come over there and join us. You too can ask questions. Every week we have new special guests, and you get to ask questions directly to the channelers and to the beings that they channel. So see you in the portal.